Wonderful.
Hello and welcome to the Short Hills Association presentation of Getting to Know the Candidate. I am Jay Morielli, President of the Short Hills Association, and along with Tom Hildner, will moderate the discussion. The format will be as follows. Candidates will be given a brief introduction of themselves, and that will be followed with 4 questions that have come from our members and our board. The candidates have been given the questions in advance. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Puja Parikh. And as a reminder, the primary election date is June the 10th. There are 3 candidates running in the Democratic primary and 2 candidates running in the Republican primary. The 2 primary candidates with the most votes in their respective primaries will face off in the November election for 2 seats on the Township Committee. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tom Hildner.
All right. Thanks, Jay. Good afternoon, Pooja. To begin with, please take a few minutes and tell us about yourself and why you are running for a seat on the Township Committee.
Absolutely. First of all, good morning, good afternoon, Jay and Tom. Thank you so much for hosting these candidate interviews. I think it's a really good thing to be doing, and I appreciate the Short Hills Association for doing so. Um, my name is Puja Parikh, and I am a resident of Short Hills. I live in the Poet section. My husband and I moved here about 8 years or 5 years ago, and we fallen in love with it. This is home. Professionally, I'm a licensed mental health professional and a board certified behavior analyst. My career spans over about 2 decades. I've worked in public school districts in New York as well as Stamford, Connecticut, with children who are, receiving special education services. And before that, I also worked as um, a clinician and an advocate for women who were survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking. This was also in New York. And I had other, experiences just working within different organizations and community mental health for a while. Now, for the past 8 years, I've been in my own private practice. I work with children and families, and I help them navigate through neurodevelopmental disorders, the educational process, and everything that kind of comes along with that, especially difficult family transitions. So a lot of different pieces, and I'm hopeful that it, can collaborate and move families forward. Now, before moving here, we were here when COVID. So I think when we moved, things were still kind of not fully in person yet, but I found a way to get, involved and contribute. I was the executive director for the Millburn Short Hills Chamber of Commerce. I'm a coordinator for our Millburn Municipal Alliance Committee. And of course, I am also on the board of the Short Hills Association and co-founded with the core team when we did the initial Poets Watch initiative when crime was really bad here at about 2022 or so we started. So those are kind of the things I've been doing locally. And I'm running now for a township committee because over the last few years, I've lived here for 5 years, long enough to sort of see the transitions and the changes. And I've noticed that there have been some concerns regarding the quality of life. And I've noticed starting with crime, later with all of the overdevelopment. So I felt that this was the right time for me to bring my expertise, my personal and professional acumen, and commitment to our community. So I'm hopeful to be able to earn your trust and vote in November and serve on the Township Committee.
Okay, thank you. All right, the first of our 4 questions is as follows. Please identify the 4 most important policy issues facing Millburn Township and tell us when and how the Township Committee should address them.
Absolutely. So, the most important issue facing Millburn is Trenton mandated overdevelopment currently. My husband and I moved to Millburn Short Hills to raise our children. I have a 8-year-old and a 4-month-old in a close-knit suburb, but due to the mishandling of the third round of affordable housing, Millburn now faces an unsustainable income segregated housing project on contaminated land. Now, this project threatens our township with a potential financial liability of over $50 million. And I commend the township committee for pushing back against, these unreasonable demands of Fair Share Housing Center, and I fully support their efforts, and I will be participating in them to continue to defend our town. The fourth round of affordable housing presents an opportunity, I think, for a more responsible approach. The updated housing element and fair share plan, which will soon be presented to the public, have been community oriented and transparent, a significant departure from the prior round. And the Township Committee should continue engaging residents and seeking their input before making any major decisions. I think that is paramount. Um, Another critical issue is safety and security. Residents need to feel safe and in their homes and in the communities. So I became involved in our local, government in RTC in 2023 when I was working to co-found and with the core team for the Poets Watch neighborhood initiative. Um, because the rise in crime, especially in our neighborhood at the time, was very noticeable and concerning. We had, car thefts, home burglaries, and mail thefts in the poet section. In fact, I think I had a neighbor on our street whose car was stolen in the middle of the day at like noon. So that was highly concerning. Um, but I think since then, the Township Committee has proactively addressed crime by increasing police patrols, offering, security assessments to homeowners, and fostering community engagement through events like the Coffee with a Cop. Now, Frank and Ben also initiated a comprehensive police staffing study to ensure the department has the resources needed for a town like ours. They empowered the police with technology and resources to fight crime effectively, and we've already seen the progress. Home burglaries dropped by about 39% from 2023 to 2024, and car thefts decreased by 59%. More work is needed, especially to improve mall security and pedestrian safety. But, particularly as the high density housing projects bring more vehicle congestion. So the township should also explore real-time alert systems to keep residents informed when and where criminal activity is occurring. I have advocated for real-time alerts, officially through the township, but at this time, I guess it is not something that has been feasible to do, but that is something I will continue to support. We do need that. The third issue is long-term strategic planning. While Milburn has weathered the pandemic better than, surrounding towns, a long-term capital expenditure plan is essential. As a township committee member, I would work with the business administrator to provide a clear account of upcoming projects, allowing the community to evaluate and prioritize much needed infrastructure improvements. The TC should establish appropriate criteria to evaluate each project, ensuring that the benefits and trade-offs are transparent to everyone. And lastly,
Puja, you're at time. Could you quickly wrap up?
absolutely. And lastly, we must preserve our landmarks, open spaces, and environment. Flooding remains to be an issue. I know we'll cover that later on. But, as a mental health professional, outdoor space, open, time with nature is incredibly important for mental health. So we need to support our landmarks and open spaces and the environment as a whole. That is really good for us and our families.
Thank you. Our second question. Please identify 3 significant policy successes, if any, and 3 significant policy failures, if any, of the Township Committee during the last 2 years, and state the reasons why you describe them as successes or failures.
Yes, no, absolutely. So since January 2024, there have been several significant successes under the leadership of Frank and Ben. Among the top successes have been, number one, pushback against overdevelopment. The Township Committee has resisted the unreasonable demands of Fair Share Housing Center and state-level Democrats to overdevelop our small suburb. The TC has made significant progress, in both the third and fourth rounds of the affordable housing processes. It's providing reasonable alternatives to the income segregated housing project on the contaminated and toxic dump site that we currently have. Importantly, they have involved residents and the public in determining where development should occur, ensuring a more balanced, community-driven approach. Number two, Improved public safety. Frank and Ben have empowered our police department with the necessary technology and resources to reduce crime, particularly in areas like the car theft and home burglaries. Since 2023, when home burglaries, were at an all-time high, crime has dropped significantly. This is a direct result of increased police patrols, better community engagement, and strategic investments in public safety. And number three, public engagement and transparency. Frank and Ben restored the second round of public comment during township committee meetings, a key promise from their campaign. Now, that was a major departure from January 2023, when the Zoom option was, removed right after the incumbents, Romano and Cohen, took their seats on the TC. Now, I'm not sure why that had worked out that way, but I know as a parent with young children, it's important to have accessibility. So we do need to have this, option for people to be able to participate. And Zoom removing that was not the best option at the time. It reduced participation. So I'm glad that it is restored. Additionally, Frank and Ben spearheaded the ordinance that brought the Charter Commission referendum to the ballot in November. This referendum is an essential step towards potentially moving to a nonpartisan elections, empowering residents to decide how they will be governed. Now, the three major policy failures that I see include failure to push back on the dump housing project when we have the most leverage. Now, in April 2023, our incumbents, Romano and Cohen, or you may know them as Annette and Michael, allowed RPM, a developer who didn't own land in Millburn, to join the lawsuit. They did not question why we were giving away land and financially backstopping a housing project that exceeds our realistic development potential. Essentially, we didn't need to offer that many. It was going beyond what was being expected at that time, and we were put in a significantly weaker position as a result, and it continues to be problematic for us today. Lack of advocacy from state and county officials. Millburn has failed to secure meaningful support from our state legislators and county officials. In 2023, state representatives voted secretly or strictly, my apologies, along party lines to pass the affordable housing bill, ignoring local concerns. Even though some TC members claim strong relationships with county officials, these have not necessarily translated into reinvestment in Millburn, despite the significant taxes we contribute.
Okay, you're at time again.
Yep. And again, failure to form the Citizens Budget Advisory Committee. So I do think we need that to align with our master plan for long-range capital spending, and that is something I will advocate for.
Okay, thank you. Let me proceed to the third question then. Flooding remains one of the largest long-term challenges facing the town. The Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee has been working to identify and prioritize potential projects to reduce the likelihood of flooding and to minimize the impact when flooding occurs. What projects, whether identified by the Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee or not, would you propose moving forward with? If you are elected to the Township Committee, what will you do to move those projects forward?
Yes, flooding remains one of Millburn's most significant challenges, and we've seen the devastation it causes firsthand. The damage makes it clear we can't just react to flooding after it happens. We must take proactive steps to prevent it before it starts. Millburn is moving in the right direction thanks to Frank and Ben's leadership. Under their guidance, the Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee, or as I call it, FMAC, has shifted toward long-term data-driven solutions, moving away from some of those temporary stopgap measures that only address the symptoms and not the root cause. Flood protection must be a priority in both our short and long-term capital plans. The first step in reducing flooding is investing in infrastructure that protects our neighborhoods. While we can't prevent extreme storms, we can reduce flooding by building better retention systems and expanding upstream detention. Now, these measures will help minimize flooding and improve our ability to handle peak rainfall for several hours before downtown flooding becomes a significant risk. The FMAC has identified several feasible solutions to protect both our downtown and residential neighborhoods. With some of these projects, are costly, but neighboring towns that benefit from these measures should contribute to the cost. I mean, the flooding is a regional problem and must be addressed collectively. We should also pursue state and federal funding, which is expected to be restored, and conduct engineering studies to prepare for implementation. Now, one immediate change we can make, and this is at no cost, is adjusting the rainfall retention threshold for commercial properties. Milburn currently follows state regulations that require properties to detain up to 4 inches of rainfall, but 4 inches of rain is common and leads to flooding in areas like Taylor Pond, Main Street, and Vauxhall. So Milburn can set higher standards and should require commercial developments to detain up to 8 inches of rain. This would help reduce runoff into our rivers and prevent new development from worsening flooding. The Orange Reservoir bypass project, while useful for smaller storms, is not a long-term solution. Its capacity is limited, and draining it before storms won't prevent large-scale flooding. We need more comprehensive solutions. FMAC plays, a crucial role, but lacks authority to propose legislation or request funding directly from the Township Committee. So, if elected, I would advocate for the FMAC to have these capabilities and ensure Milburn has a dedicated line item for flood management projects in its budget. We do not currently have this in our planning. And finally, I will continue to support the Township Committee's efforts to work with neighboring municipalities, the county, and the city of Orange. Milburn deserves the same level of attention and funding for flood mitigation as other municipalities. I mean, like Hoboken, which received $230 million from the state and $6 million from FEMA. So flooding is an ongoing issue, but with the right leadership and focus on long-term solutions, we can make sure that Milburn is safer and more resilient for future generations.
Okay, thank you. All right, a final question. The Charter Study Commission referendum vote will occur in the November election. Do you plan to vote for or against the referendum, and why? If the commission is formed, what do you believe its recommendations should be? If you are in favor of changing Milburn's form of government, what form of municipal government would be your preference and why? For example, do you prefer a form of government in which the mayor is elected directly by the voters, or one in which the mayor, as we have now, is chosen by the township committee members? Do you prefer partisan or nonpartisan elections?
As you know, I was a lifelong Democrat before switching parties to run on the Vote for Milburn platform. So, over the years, I've witnessed how partisan politics negatively impacted the way our local government functions. I believe we need to move beyond party divisions and create a local government that truly works for the people of Milburn Short Hills. And, our town's most pressing issues have been delayed or even, made worse because of political divides. And I want to see us take a more effective and inclusive approach. I am fully supportive of the Charter Study Commission referendum and will enthusiastically vote for the formation of the commission rather. And it's critical that Milburn Short Hills explore how we can improve our governance structure and ensure that it best reflects the needs and desires of our community. I strongly believe that Milburn Short Hills should have nonpartisan local elections. The 1972 Charter Commission, after significant study and debate, also recommended against partisan elections for several important reasons. They believe that party politics serve no useful purpose at the local level. Local government issues such as budgets, facilities, and long-term planning are far removed from the national, state, and county politics. Just let's take more local leaf blower policy that we've been having. That is very unique to what our town is dealing with, and that is what local governance is really should be for too. Tying local elections to these broader political organizations only complicates and distracts from the real concerns of residents. Furthermore, the 1972 Commission noted that some highly qualified individuals in our community generally shy away from seeking office simply because they don't wish to identify themselves with a political party to run for local office, or they can't based on the occupation and restrictions by their employers, perhaps. Um, by moving to nonpartisan elections, we would open up opportunities for these qualified individuals to run and contribute to our town without the barriers of partisan affiliation. In 1972, the commission recommended a council manager form of government where the mayor is selected by the council instead of being directly elected. While this was a valid solution at the time, I do believe, in the past 53 years have brought changes that warrant revisiting the issue. Now, the commission will need to look carefully at whether a directly elected mayor or another form of government would be more effective in today's Millburn. Ultimately, I am one person out of the 22,000 residents in Millburn Short Hills, so I do not believe I should have a larger voice in this decision than anyone else. And this is a crucial issue, and I trust that the Charter Study Commission will gather public input through research and forums. I'm open to all options and fully support a thorough process that includes the voices of all our residents. It's a complex issue and it will require careful thought. And I look forward to seeing the work of the commission in crafting a governance model that is truly responsive to the needs of our community as it is today.
Okay. Well, thank you for your answers to our questions. In
Thank you.
conclusion, please tell us briefly why the voters should support you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think we're at some critical junctions here in our township. And while I've lived here 5 years, I believe that's long enough to have seen, what makes our town exceptional, as well as, the areas that we need to work on. And I believe we need um, an approach that really includes the people of our township and doesn't make decisions simply for them. So I believe with my background in mental health and with my personal and professional experiences that have also, included working in several areas within the township, I've come to learn a lot about it. I've made a lot of, built a lot of relationships. I've seen issues from different perspectives. And I believe that my experience brings a little bit of emotional intelligence into this equation that I think we sorely need right now. And I believe we need people who are open to connecting with one another, understanding, what the real issues are, and focusing on solving issues with transparency, oversight, and planning. I bring a systems thinking perspective, which is important because nothing, about this township works in it independently from another. That is why we're, what we're seeing now, these piecemeal plans to have certain projects without long-term planning. I'm seeing a much more reactive approach, and I've been seeing that prior to Frank and Ben coming on board. And I think we need to have planned, proactive um, governance models in place. We need our TC to have better oversight and collaboration so that we can have a township that is continuing to do well and continue to stay the reason why so many people move here for our beautiful neighborhood that involves, a lot of open nature, for our amazing schools and for the safety that we all crave and need. So I believe I am ready and able to do this work, and I have the skills and the passion to do so. So I hope to earn your votes and trust this fall.
Okay. Well, Puja, we want to thank you and the other primary candidates for being willing to serve on the township committee and for participating in our candidate interviews. So thanks very much, and uh, good luck in your campaign.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Puja.
Bye-bye.